and welcome to the Week 10 edition of the quote-unquote expert, quote-unquote Roundtable. My name is Adam Levitan. I am the father, very special lady, Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world. And as always, I am joined by America's sharpest hippie, JMToWin. JM, what's going on?
The people just missed a scintillating Snapchat conversation between us. So I guess we'll have to get to football now that we're done talking social media.
I'm not on Snapchat. I assume that all that's on there is dick pics, so I don't really see why I need to be on there. But according to everybody, Snapchat has the highest market potential. Everybody thinks Snapchat's going to be the biggest thing. So maybe one day, but no,
it's like a whole world on there. So I signed up this week. My wife's out of town, and she's such a millennial that was literally the best way to communicate with her when she's out of town. We never talk when she's out of town. So
Did you get any nudes?
Not yet. I'm holding out hope. I'm now friends with 4 people, a buddy from high school, my wife, Hefe, and Ship My Money. So maybe a nude from Hefe or Ship My Money or from my wife. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Let me know how that goes.
I'm not actually Hefe. Don't send me a nude, please. I'll see you in person next week in Nashville. It'll be awkward.
Oh, yeah. I am not going to make it, man. That sucks, but you're going, huh?
I'm going. Hang out with Evan and Hefe, and we'll do it big for you.
Yeah, that's sweet. Are you still going to be able to do the show?
Yeah, I'll do the show. I'll fly out Saturday morning.
Oh, wow. So you're staying home in, the hippie lounge to do the show, and then you're flying out Saturday, huh?
Yeah, precisely. Got to get the work done in the hippie lounge.
Look at the dedication. All right, speaking of dedication, we have a slate that was turned on its head later in the week when we found out that Matt Forte would not play. I expect Bilal Powell to be 80 to 90% owned in cash and somewhere between 45 and 55% owned most likely in tournaments would be my guess right now. That has kind of changed the entire slate. How do you see this slate as a whole, Jam?
I'm not alone in this. I think that the sharpest plays on the slate as far as raw point projections are Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. We'll get to this throughout the show. There are obviously cases to be made for fading them in tournaments as there is for any player. But with Powell, it's interesting to realize how easy it is to fit both of them in together on DraftKings, which is entirely unusual with tight pricing on DraftKings. But there's some quarterback values, some defense values. Obviously, Powell is a great value. Underpriced guys like Sterling Shepard, Carlos Hyde. So, just a lot that we can do with this slate. I'm pretty excited about it this week.
Yeah, I don't mind when we get one of these kind of obvious plays that is cheap because it gives people an ability to be creative at higher prices, right? Just because there is one guy who is just the smash at 4K doesn't mean everybody's gonna have the same roster the rest of the way, right? People have choice to do a lot of different things. Whereas when pricing is super, super tight across every single spot, it's well, I got to take this Dez value. He's 6,400. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And this week, I think you can make a case for a lot of guys. You showed me some thoughts you had, and you didn't have Golden Tate in there, which I thought was interesting. But those are the kind of decisions that you can make when you have a guy and you can be creative with your spends, and you can get guys like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell to the same lineup, which sounds absurd. But
before we get to position by position, that's an important note. Just that a week like this, you have to people are going to think about fading the chalk at the low end of the price range because that's what we're conditioned to do. Because the chalk is often not that sharp. It's we're forcing in guys at 4K just because they're 4K, and we're hoping they can get 10 points. This shifts back to 2014, 2015 DraftKings play where I'm not saying you have to take Bilal Powell, but the only case for fading him is maybe he has a bad game, maybe he gets injured. He's the best play, and then you can do different things at the higher end of the price range. I think that's a great way for the slate to set up. It's definitely the best for overall, play, and it's good to be aware of that's where we're at this week.
All right, let's get into quarterbacks. My first instinct was Matthew Stafford and Ben Roethlisberger are awesome plays. I think the more I've thought about it, the more I prefer Matthew Stafford. But if you want to play Le'Veon and Antonio together, or if you really want to have, one of these other or two of these other high-priced plays like Gurley or Fournette or McCoy, it's going to be hard to fit Stafford or Ben. But let's start there to start here. Stafford, Dak, and Ben, I think, and I guess Matt Ryan at the high range. Do you have a preference out of those guys? Do any of those stand out? And are you thinking about paying up at quarterback?
I guess I'm alone on liking Dak more than Stafford. Okay.
I think that will not be the most popular opinion. Yeah, I think Stafford will be more owned, but Dak's going to be popular too. I mean, I played him last week on DraftKings. He's just the man. I mean, he's not having sex right now also, which is just the cherry on top.
I thought that was a bad thing. I thought that's what we established with Russ last year.
Keeps you focused, bro.
Man, so many changes in Levitan's philosophy on life. How's the home life going? So I think it's notable. Nobody cares about this besides me. I think it's notable that the Browns have allowed the 9th fewest yards in the NFL. We get points from touchdowns. We also get points from yards. I mean, yards are a big part of what we're looking for. The Browns are so bad, not because they're so bad on defense, but they're so bad because they keep giving teams short fields. I mean, they are the number 1 run defense in the NFL. And even though they have some bad advanced metrics against the pass, they haven't been awful. I mean, they're top 5 team against wide receivers. They're weaker in the middle of the field where Golden Tate runs his routes. We can get to that later. Obviously awful against the tight end, but Eric Ebron's been so poor this year. I just don't want to trust Stafford if he's going to be chalky. Like if you were going to be 5% owned, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take a shot there. But 12%, 15%, that's not a guy I want to pay up for. I love Dak. I think he's the top play up here. I'd be fine with Stafford. I'm fine with Roethlisberger. I'm fine with Matt Ryan. But I think if you pay up, Dak is the best play. And then, after that, there's just so much value down low that we can get 15 to 20 points for 5K and, say, okay, maybe one of these guys gets 25 to 30, but maybe they get 20 to 22 and we're sitting pretty with 15 to 20 from the cheap guys.
Yeah, on Stafford, I think it's just a situation where it fits so perfectly, right? You mentioned how good Cleveland is against the run. I mean, I don't think people realize how dominant Cleveland has been against the run, and that's fine. Like, let's take a pass-centric game plan against the Browns, and that's fine by the Lions, who we've seen skew really heavy towards the pass in previous seasons and are getting like a broken run game anyways from Amir Abdullah. So I think we'll see a really pass-heavy approach from the Lions, and I think just playing at home, like they'll have a chance to be more efficient than maybe we've seen some other teams against the Browns before. So yeah, I think Stafford's a really, really good play. I think I would prefer him to Dak, especially when you consider the 500 in savings on Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, I know he's been bad. I know he's on the road, but like, man, this Colts defense, if you look at what Ben is doing, his average depth of target this year is 3rd deepest in the league. I think that the Colts are the worst team at defending deep balls in the league by almost any metric. So that just fits really well there. We saw what Ben did last year to the Colts on Thanksgiving. I mean, he was going to go absolutely berserk if Scott Tolzien could have just done anything. And I think Jacoby Brissett at least has a chance to keep this game somewhat competitive. So I do like Ben. I do like Stafford. Fine with Dak. Fine with Ryan. But you mentioned, I think maybe the more optimal play, the more I've thought about it, is to go down. So there's a few options. I think there is Eli is a strong option. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is an option. And I think a cut below those guys, but maybe still an option, is CJ Beathard. So talk to me about Fitz and Eli and these guys.
So I'm going to throw out some crazy stats about the Giants and 49ers. They're both teams are top 4 in the league in pace of play. Both teams are top 6 in the league in passing play percentage. Both teams are bottom 6 in yards and points allowed. The one that stands out to me the most is both teams are bottom 4 in time of possession. Why this matters? Both teams are top 2 in opponent plays allowed, and then they're bottom 4 in time of possession. We combine their average time of possession. There's 6 minutes and 7 seconds missing. So these guys are priced for like 27 minutes of time of possession per game. Add on an extra 3 minutes, you're talking about 6, 8, 10 extra plays per team in a better matchup than they've had in a long time. So I love Eli. He's faced the Chargers, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Broncos. I mean, he's had a tough run of quarterback matchups. It's crazy to say, but with Mike Evans out, Eli also has better weapons in Shepard and Ingram than Fitzpatrick has. So I love Eli this week. I think that we'll see lower ownership on him than Fitzpatrick, maybe not notably lower, but lower. I think Fitzpatrick is a super sharp play in cash, especially just because I think ownership will be higher there. And I don't think that like, it wouldn't surprise me if Fitzpatrick outscores Eli. Like, it's maybe 40-60 that he's an underdog there. And I think the ownership gap will be large enough in cash that it just makes sense to go with Fitzpatrick. But I love both these guys. I agree with Beathard. Do you have any concerns that maybe Beathard will get benched partway through the game for Garoppolo if he continues playing awful?
No, I don't think they'll do that to Garoppolo. I think that they want to get him like a clean look. You know what I mean? But I think the concern for me on Beathard would be more that like the Giants hit absolute rock bottom last week. Like you can't go any more rock bottom than what the Giants did last week. They will get back Janoris Jenkins, their best defender, arguably. This week they could get back Olivier Vernon. They could get back Jonathan Casillas, their weak side linebacker. And I think they have a chance to, like, even if they hate their coach, right, which I think they do, and even if their coach is incapable, which I think we can agree he probably is, like, just as a man, like, you don't want to get humiliated like that and not bounce back. So I think we could see more of an inspired performance out of the Giants, who certainly have more talent on the field defensively than the 49ers do. So I would pretty strongly prefer Eli over Beathard. And if I can find the, 200, I would prefer Eli over Fitz as well. Also in the 5K range, we have Jacoby Brissett. We have Marcus Mariota. Do any of those guys do anything for you, perhaps from a tournament perspective?
No, I prefer McCown over either of those just because of the matchup for McCown. Mariota's looked pretty bad this year. He has a horrible matchup against Cincinnati, who's been one of the best teams in the NFL against the pass. They've actually been the best team in the NFL against wide receivers as far as catches allowed. And Brissett, yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh is also top 5 in basically every major, pass defense category. So I'd rather go to the guys with the better matchups, especially, talking about Eli is going to throw it, minimum 35 times, but probably 40 times with huge volume and a fast pace and a high passing play percentage. I just think that makes a lot more sense to go to one of those guys.
Yep. The only other guy I have here on my list who I don't think I would use because I think Tom Savage just makes it so it's unlikely he'll have his foot on the gas for very long. But Jared Goff is 6,700. And I think if you have come around, which I don't know if you have yet, but if you've come around on the fact that this Texans defense without J.J. Watt, without Whitney Merciless, without Brian Cushing, maybe without Jonathan Joseph again is hashtag bad. You have to at least consider Jared Goff, but he's 6,700 and he's more expensive than Ben, more expensive than Matt Ryan, right there with Stafford, only a little bit cheaper than Dak. I probably won't be playing Goff. Do you have any interest in him?
No, and I agree with you on the Houston defense.
Hey, finally, yes.
Yeah, too bad that I didn't agree with you the last couple of weeks. But no, I agree with you. And the thing with Goff is just I believe the Rams are 28th in passing play percentage, maybe 27th. I mean, they're not putting a lot on Goff's shoulders. And honestly, what McVay is doing is just masterful. Think about Cooper Kupp having 13 red zone targets. Like, this guy is not a guy that you throw to 13 times in the red zone, but it's just high percentage throws that aren't going to lead to mistakes, keeps building his confidence. I mean, that's really what this season has been about, is just prepping for the future. The Rams just happen to have enough talent and enough coaching talent that they're also winning games this year. So I just think they're not going to open things up unless they have to. One thing I will note that was interesting, Goff's second most pass attempts, 37 pass attempts, came in a 33-0 win against Arizona. So I think it's less about limiting him when the score gets out of hand and more just that they're not going to throw the ball a ton regardless. So if they get extra plays, he could throw it 35 to 40 times, but nothing sets up to make it likely that they get enough plays that happens.
Any off the board quarterbacks you like?
No, I mean, I'm pretty locked into the value. Maybe that'll change over the next couple of days, but right now I'm on these cheaper guys.
All right, let's go to running back. I do not see a lot below 5K. In fact, I see almost nothing below 5K outside of Bilal Powell. So answer me 2 questions. One, I tell you Bilal Powell will be 55% owned in a GPP. And I think it matters what size GPP, right? Like if you're playing, let's say in the Wildcat, where he might be even more owned, the 333 on DK, he might be 65% owned. Can you stomach that ownership in the Wildcat on Bilal Powell? So answer me that, number one. And number two, do you see anything else at running back below 5K?
Yeah, I think that like even with a little bit higher ownership in those tournaments, I think that in a smaller field tournament, so for you and me, we're talking Wildcat or the $1,500 tournament, the luxury box. For like different buy-in levels, we're also talking about just single entry tournaments. I think that you still take that play because in a smaller field, it's better to just take that solid chalk play that even if Powell misses, unless he gets hurt, even if he misses, he's going to get you 12, 13 points. And then you differentiate elsewhere is the way that I like to approach things in those tournaments. I think you make a stronger case in something like the Millie Maker where you have to beat a couple 100,000 entries and we're finishing like 15th place doesn't even matter. You really have to finish top 5 for it to matter. I think that in a situation like that, you can make a better game theory case for it. Hefe, what do you think? Game theory, blah, blah, blah. I'm Hefe. I just Powell's the best play though. I think you play him. The under 5K, so point per dollar, I think Frank Gore is one of the best plays on the slate. But in terms of upside, now that Powell's there, I don't think I'll go to Gore. I think that Gore is going to get you 12, 13 points in this spot. So if we're just talking pure point per dollar, he's a great play. And then Orleans Darkwa, I like him a lot. I don't think he tops 20 touches. Like, I don't think that the extra play volume necessarily means he's going to see 25 touches. I think they'll still spread the ball out, but it does pretty securely lock him into those 16, 18, 20 touches. So for 4,500, I like him quite a bit as well.
Yeah. I think Darkwa would have carried more ownership if not for the Powell thing. Now Darkwa's going to have very low ownership. They do seem to have locked onto him as the feature guy. I'm always scared that like, hey, we're going to go with Gallman today, or hey, we're going to go with Perkins today or whatever. But he does seem to have secured the job. So that's at least interesting. Let's move up to the mid-range here. I think that you can make a pretty strong case for Jordan Howard, who has seen massive usage lately, and especially massive usage when the Bears have leads. I mean, all they want to do is hide Trubisky and run the football. So Jordan Howard at 6,100. Devontae Freeman is off the injury report. He is 6K as a home favorite against the Cowboys. And a guy that I think will be the most popular in this kind of mid-range group is Carlos Hyde, who has just gone completely nuts with catching the football, at least last week. We talked about it last week, how he's getting a lot of targets. He just wasn't converting them. Last week, he converted them and just went absolutely ham. So in a home game against the Giants, Carlos Hyde at 6,300, I expect to be very popular too. What do you think about these mid-range guys?
I think that Hyde is the best play out of the bunch. Devontae Freeman has seen under or 15 or fewer touches in 4 straight games. I know he's off the injury report, but that's still a little bit of a concern for me. With that said, Devontae Freeman can put up 20 points on 15 touches, and if he gets 20 touches, he can smash. So I think that he's a great tournament play. Jordan Howard, I obviously want more passing volume, but I do agree that he'll probably get 25 carries. So I'm fine with that. And then you skipped over Lamar Miller. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on him, and then I'm interested on your takes. So the Rams or the Texans ranked 25th in passing play percentage. They prefer to run the ball. That's even with Watson when Watson was starting. The Rams have seen the 13th most rush attempts in the NFL, 7th most rushing yards, which I think is noteworthy because they've blown out a ton of teams. They're so difficult to pass on. The teams are still running the ball. So I think we have a 6-2 team that's had so many blowout wins, and they've still faced the 13th most running back rush attempts. That just tells us the teams really just want to attack on the ground against him. So I think that Lamar Miller, he made no sense as chalk last week at 6,200. Now his price has dropped 1K and nobody's talking about him. I think he's going to get, 15 plus touches, 3 or 4 catches, or 15 plus carries, 3 or 4 catches. So at 5,200, I think he's an awesome play this week as well.
Yeah, I think people are off Lamar Miller because they just expect the Rams to truck the Texans and they won't have red zone opportunities. They won't have good leverage situations for Lamar Miller to kind of be in good down and distance stuff. And I just think when people see Savage, they're just like, forget it. And honestly, I'm kind of that way too. I'm just like, God, I don't even want to mess with Lamar Miller in the fear that the Texans just get absolutely like truck stomped. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. Like I would almost rather consider DeMarco Murray. I know it's like a bad matchup and everything, but I would almost rather go there in the mid-range. We can talk about him in a little bit. I think we need to go up to this higher range here where we have kind of a tough call, I think, between LaShawn McCoy, Todd Gurley, and Leonard Fournette, who are all awesome plays. Leonard Fournette should be extremely fresh, a month off due to the ankle, then the bye, then the team imposed discipline. The way you beat the Chargers is for sure by running the football. You don't expose yourself to Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. You don't expose yourself to Casey Hayward. And the Jaguars, we know they want to run the football a ton anyway. So I think Fournette makes a ton of sense. Todd Gurley, obviously, the role that he's playing, no Malcolm Brown this week, his backup, like the role Gurley's playing is just outrageous. And anytime LaShawn McCoy is at the Ralph, I want to play him. I actually think the Bills are going to play really well in this spot. So even though they're a dog, I kind of think that LaShawn McCoy is going to have the kind of usage we see when he's a favorite, when he touches the ball like literally 27 times. So given price, I think I like LaShawn McCoy the best. Given pass game role, I think I like LaShawn McCoy the best. But I think all three of these guys are awesome plays, and it's hard for me to parse between them.
I first want to note, without giving too much away, I mean, I built a team today. I sent it to you or talked to you about it for the show that has Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Leonard Fournette. You could also move up to Gurley on the team with the way the price works. And that team has Garrett Selleck, but you could, pivot up to a better tight end and down to Julio Jones, AJ Green. I mean, there's just so much that you can do, that you can pair, a top receiver with Bell and one of these other guys. So with that said, because I think that it's like we should point out that we both probably think that Bell is like a must play in cash, right?
I didn't even mention Bell because he's 1,500 more than McCoy. I think he's in his own tier, but for sure, Le'Veon Bell has the best projection on the slate. Like it's not even close in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he has 35 plus touches in 3 of his last 5 games.
Yeah.
And all of them have been, big wins. It was absurd to write it this week, but I wrote, his actual expectation is 35 touches this week. But then this conversation still stands because you can actually fit one of these other guys with Bell this week. I kind of lean, so I agree with you on all your points. Gurley's my least favorite just because the matchup is toughest, and this team seems to be kind of in playoff mode. They gave him 16 and 22. I don't recall if it was carries or touches the last 2 weeks, but you pointed out Malcolm Brown's out. Brown had 26 carries combined the last 2 weeks. I do still think that maybe we'll see some Lance Dunbar or something. I mean, the Rams, if they have a big lead, I'm not certain that Gurley gets the 24 to 33 touches he was getting earlier in the season. So for tournaments, I still love him. Huge home favorite. I have more concerns about him than the other two. Fournette, yeah, I mean, he's getting 3 to 5 catches. So that floor from catches is lower than what we have from LaShawn McCoy. But like you said, I mean, that's the way to beat the Chargers. Just run. I mean, yeah, I think 24, 25 carries for Fournette. He should top 100 yards. He should have a couple cracks at a touchdown. So I love him. LaShawn McCoy, the matchup couldn't be better against the Saints team that is very attackable on the ground. McCoy's like jitterbug stuff behind the line of scrimmage probably lowers his floor below Fournette, even with the higher catch expectation, just because there are more opportunities for him to have, gains of 0 yards or 1 yard. So just kind of working through things in my mind. Yeah, I'd say that Fournette's floor is a little bit higher. I think their ceiling's about the same. I like Fournette a little more, but I love both guys.
Okay, let's start to go off the board a little bit here at running back. I mentioned DeMarco Murray. He's down to 5K. Still think he has a pretty good stranglehold in terms of like 60-40 over Derrick Henry. So healthy off of a bye, and you mentioned how tough Cincinnati's pass defense is. I expect this to be like a low-scoring, slow game between the Titans and Bengals, but DeMarco Murray is at least in play at that price. We have the Dallas situation with Alfred Morris at 5,500. I think he'll start. I think Rod Smith will back him up. I think we'll see Darren McFadden mix in a little bit, but Alfred Morris has had some big, impressive runs this season. And then we have the pass-catching backs, Chris Thompson and Alvin Kamara. Anything off the board that stands out for you?
So, yeah, Alfred Morris is a fine play. He's kind of Jordan Howard when we talk about limited catches, and with him priced up at 5,500 and Howard only 600 more, I lean Howard just because like Alf could get 25 carries, but he could also get 12 to 15. Whereas we know that Howard, I mean, barring an unexpected offensive explosion from the Packers, we know Howard's going to get 25 carries. So he stands out to me less. The guy who stands out to me the most that you skipped over and stands out to me the most, partly because everyone's just going to skip over him, is Mark Ingram. And I know that we were both curled up in a fetal position on Sunday due to Ingram's usage. You less so than me because you used T.Y. Hilton and I did not. But I had a good enough team that even without T.Y. Hilton, like I would have had a profitable weekend if Mark Ingram had done what I expected him to do. But he played 60% of the snaps. It was his highest snap rate of the season. Like the drop in targets is just a fluky thing. He was on the field. I think we still lock him in for 16 to 20 carries and 4 catches against a team that's missing Marcel Darius and looked bad against the run their last time out. So that's the guy off the board that's really drawing my attention. I think that Ingram makes for a really strong tournament play. I think that if you've had interest in Ingram the last few weeks, you keep interest in him here. I mean, I think he's right below Fournette and McCoy in expectations for me, and ownership's going to be super low in tournaments.
Yeah, Ingram is 7,400, right? So he is still priced up, I think. And the concern for me, at least, is that the Saints offense is going to sputter in the Ralph, number one. And number two, like Kamara might just be better. And that's no knock on Ingram, but like Kamara legit might just be better. And we saw last game Kamara start. A lot of Ingram snaps came late in the game after it was kind of already decided. And that's not to say that Ingram's not going to start this game and he doesn't still have his role because he's might, but I think that there's some concern there on a guy who's 7,400. At 7,200 is Melvin Gordon, who we don't really have a question about his role, and he's playing the Jaguars. So I think I might prefer Melvin Gordon to Ingram, but I'm not that crazy high on either of them. If you want to get nuts, what do you think about this Chris Thompson play with all of their problems, with the pass rush going to be a problem? If you think the Redskins are going to play well in this game, you would think that a lot of it would have to come through Chris Thompson. We know Xavier Rhodes will be locked down on the outside. Chris Thompson was a guy who was super popular early in the year. I never played him, haven't played him once this year, but he's 5,700. He's at least more palatable to me now.
Yeah, I mean these guys who are getting. Let me see this. So 9. These are Chris Thompson's target count: 6, 9, 5, 5. It's really the same thing as Kamara for me. He's only been seeing 3 to 7 targets, and he hasn't topped 10 carries this year. Like the efficiency is so high that the price is climbing way higher than the workload justifies. So like the thing with Thompson and Kamara, I said last week with Thompson that basically we hadn't seen his floor with his workload. Last week he had 7.4 points. Like that's the floor on Kamara and Thompson. So even though they've shown a much higher ceiling, you still have to like pencil them in for that floor. So yeah, I mean, I think that Thompson obviously could hit 20 points. He's done it a bunch of times, but or top 15 points a bunch of times. I'm fine with it, but I won't go there myself just because there's too many plays with higher floors at running back.
I think
I don't need to take on like a 7-point floor to get 20 points.
Right. No, I agree. And I think Kamara's floor is actually significantly higher than Chris Thompson's. I mean, Kamara has a legit role in the run game and a legit role in the red zone. Like Kamara has gotten carries in the red zone, whereas Chris Thompson, we're not going to see that from. You know what I mean? So I don't think you really compare the floor of Kamara and Chris Thompson. But then again, Kamara is 1,200 more. And as you said, I mean, Kamara's only 500 less than Mark Ingram this week. Anything else at running back?
No, I think we covered it.
All right, the wide receiver position, we better start with the Tampa Bay Bucks because a lot of people want to know what to do here. Mike Evans has been suspended. I expect Chris Godwin to start on the outside. I expect Adam Humphries to stay in a slot role. Like if you're projecting Adam Humphries to suddenly play 100% of the snaps and start running routes out wide, I think you're mistaken. Will we see an increased target share for Adam Humphries? I mean, probably, right? Like you replace Mike Evans with Chris Godwin, and I gave Chris Godwin a 5-target projection, and Mike Evans was getting 9.1. So there's probably like 4 or 5 targets extra to go around between the existing guys. Adam Humphries scares me as just like a Cole Beasley-esque slot guy playing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's like, God, am I really going to do this? But he is 3,100. So talk to me about this Bucs situation.
You answered the question I was going to ask, which was how many targets do you project Godwin for? This has been one of the pass heaviest offenses in the NFL. There's no guarantee that remains the case with Jameis Winston out. And then, like you said, okay, you're putting Godwin at 5 targets. We lose, 9 from Evans. Like that leaves 4 targets and a potentially lower passing volume. And I think we see more 12 personnel with OJ Howard on the field. Brate's going to get his targets. Howard's going to get his. Deshaun's still going to get his. So, you're basically looking at, I'm thinking Godwin sees more like 3 or 4 looks, but regardless, if he's in that 3 to 5 range, you're basically adding like maybe 1 target onto everyone else if passing volume remains the same, which it may not. So I'm not giving that big of a bump to Humphreys. I think he's a fine play in cash games. His average depth of target is like basically, let's call it the same as Jarvis Landry's, right? Jarvis Landry's been under 50 yards in over half his games, and he's 3rd in the NFL in targets per game. So there's no guarantee that Humphreys is going to put up like 70 or 80 yards. I think we're basically looking at the same role, 3,100. He's a complete fade for me in tournaments, I think, just because if this dude's going to be 20+% owned, and maybe not now with the Powell news, but 20+% owned, and his realistic ceiling is like 11 or 12 points, I'm fine missing out on that. I wish there were some other cheap wide receivers I liked more, but I think there are guys. I mean, Kendrick Bourne on San Francisco, I like him quite a bit this week. He's 6'1". I think that's worth paying attention to because you've got Goodwin and Aldrick Robinson at 5'10". You've got George Kittle missing in action. Bourne saw 40 snaps, 6 targets last week. Look, everyone that Beathard throws to is going to catch under 50% of their targets, but we could legitimately see 7 or 8 targets there for some upside in tournaments. I think the Tavares King on the Giants is viable. He saw 2 end zone targets last week. I don't think you have to go to Humphreys in tournaments. And then if we go a little bit higher, you got Martavis Bryant at 3,900, which the floor is like 2 points, but the upside is immense in tournaments. Marquise Lee is 9th in the NFL in percentage share of team air yards. So there's just a lot to like under 4,500 that you don't have to go to Humphreys and tourneys.
Wow,
you really writing stuff down. What'd you write down there?
Well, I wrote down Martavis because I did, I did see speculation this morning, which didn't seem solid enough for me to really go nuts with. But I saw speculation this morning that Martavis would get his starting job back from Juju this week. I'm kind of skeptical that's going to be the case. I mean, Juju has outplayed him so severely. And then, why would you just give Martavis the job right back, doesn't he have to earn it back somehow or Juju do something to lose it? Just seems weird to me. So Martavis certainly scares me. I could see him play the number 4 receiver role all game, which could literally mean 0.0 points for Martavis Bryant. So that scares me. One guy you didn't mention below 4,500, and I know it's because of the matchup, but this guy is mega talented. We're talking about Tavares King and Adam Humphreys and these freaking Kendrick Bourne and these jokers. We have a legit talented guy at 4K who's going to play 90% of the snaps. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was the next guy I was going to bring up, Corey Davis, right?
Yeah.
He played 75% last week, 5 targets.
He was in on 84% of Mariota's dropbacks last week, and I get it, right? The Titans and Bengals are going to be slow, and the Bengals are extremely good against the pass. I mean, at 4K, Corey Davis is talented enough when he's playing the whole game, and Marcus Mariota is talented enough to beat a tough defense. It's okay. They're playing at home. I think it will be fine. I'm much more comfortable with that than Martavis or Kendrick Bourne or Humphreys. It's just for a matter of me just finding that 900. And sometimes in lineups that I built, that means not being able to play Antonio Brown, which is obviously a concern. But I'd rather not play one of these really thin wide receivers now that we have Powell, and if we're willing to play Eli or Fitzpatrick or something like that.
I don't like chasing really bad matchups, and Cincinnati against wide receivers is about as bad as it gets. They've allowed the fewest receptions in the NFL to the position. They've also faced a fairly light quarterback schedule. Marquise Lee put up 75 yards against them last week. I have interest in Marquise Lee and another decently tough wide receiver matchup against the Chargers. So I definitely think that Corey Davis at 4K is totally in play. I would love to see 7 or 8 targets instead of 5. And I don't know that we can rely on more than 5, but in tournaments, absolutely. And I think that, the concerns about Martavis that you brought up are very real. But if we're just talking, like, we're not talking about using him in cash games, but if you just talk about tournaments, like, who else in this price range could get you 25 to 30 points? We can throw Corey Davis in there as well. But I just think that with Beathard, come on, like, I don't know. Playing out of the slot with Beathard.
I know, it's a disaster.
8 targets last week and 2 catches. It's like, it's getting ridiculous. No, I mean, I think that Goodwin and Lord Aldrich are in play as well. It's just you're taking like dart throws on these guys. They're all viable, but in tournaments, I want any of these guys over Humphreys just because, like, I just don't want that 7 to 8 points. I want some more upside than that. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to bust out of this price range too if I could.
Yeah. If you can bust out of this price range, and I think a lot of people are going to land on the mid-range here. We have Deshaun Jackson, who everybody assumes is going to get a big bump. I'm not so sure. He's not exactly a receiver that you funnel offense through. He only has 1 target inside the 10-yard line all year, and a lot of seasons he gets like no targets inside the 10-yard line. We have Mohamed Sanu, who continues to rack up usage. He has a good matchup, I think, against Dallas on the inside, and then Sterling Shepard, who if you like Eli, which I think we both do, if you think that the 49ers are extremely susceptible in the slot, which I think we can all agree they are, Sterling Shepard makes a lot of sense. So I think that mid-range there, you could even throw Marvin Jones into the mid-range too, even though he's 6,200. I think all those guys make a lot of sense. Do you have a standout there?
I think Shepard's the best point per dollar play on the slate at 5,500. 9 targets is probably his floor. It's Shepard and Ingram are the only guys that Eli wants to throw to. So I absolutely love Shepard this week. You brought up almost all the guys I like in this range. The 2 that we missed are Robbie Anderson, who just in that matchup against Tampa Bay, this is another one of those high efficiency, which is weird to talk about Robbie Anderson with high efficiency, but his price has risen higher than his workload justifies because of a run of good games. But I think that he's viable against Tampa. Another one, this is one of my biggest regrets last week, was Robert Woods. We talked about Sammy Watkins, right? And the extra targets he was going to see. And it was like late Saturday night that I realized maybe the Rams just like throwing to Robert Woods. Last week he had only 5 targets, but Goff threw only 28 times. He's seen 7+ targets basically every week. So I think at 5K, he remains very playable. I think we have to call him the number 1 receiver on this team and say that, 7+ targets is bankable for him. So I like the guys you mentioned for the reasons you mentioned. I like, and Sanu's matchup. I wrote it up in the NFL Edge this week if anyone wants to see the exact stats, but teams have just smashed Dallas out of the slot. Like every receiver goes above expectations. So especially if Julio is potentially just a decoy this week, I think that Sanu is an excellent play there as well.
Deshaun Jackson, you didn't hit on. Do you agree with me that he doesn't see a big role change here with Mike Evans out?
Yeah, I mean, so Humphreys has one of the lowest ADOTs in the NFL. Deshaun Jackson is second in the NFL in average depth of target. You just have these, like, one guy just running these deep routes and one guy running underneath. So I think that Deshaun is what he is every week. He's a low floor, high upside play. That's the kind of play that inherently we try to avoid at high ownership and play at low ownership. So if people are expecting a big bump for Deshaun this week, we already broke down the targets. I just don't see a big bump in usage or a change in role. I think I still peg him the way I do every week, which leaves him a fade at high ownership.
Okay, let's keep moving up here. I think Golden Tate is an awesome play. I think Marvin Jones is fine as well. I mean, Marvin Jones is getting an obscene amount of targets. He will see more of Jason McCourty, who will be back for this game. Jason McCourty has obviously had a standout season. Marvin Jones is 600 cheaper than Golden Tate. I mean, in this spot, though, I really think Golden Tate is like a lock for 6 to 7 catches, and he's only 6,800. So I think Golden Tate is super strong. Thielen has a really good matchup in the slot against the Redskins if you want to take chances on Case Keenum going on the road. And then we get up to the higher price guys like AJ Green, Julio Jones. and obviously Antonio Brown. What do you like? Are you comfortable not having any Lions in your pass game in your lineup? It sounds like you are.
I am, and it's Golden Tate. I think his average depth of target is 6.5 yards. It's like lower than Jarvis Landry's.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I think that the case you make for Tate is two-sided. One, he's one of the best guys in the league after the catch. Two, like, you got this talented Browns defense. Like, genuinely, they have good talent on their defense. And you've got an idiot coach in Greg Williams who not only doesn't know how to scheme a defense, but also just doesn't coach guys to be disciplined. So they miss tackles, they allow big plays. It's a great spot for Golden Tate to take a 5-yard catch and turn it into a 60-yard gain. I don't want to pay $6,800 to get that, though. Like, I don't want to pay $6,800 for a possession receiver who's going to pick up yards after the catch when I can pay a little bit more for – I don't know, just the way that savings break down this week. I want to get up to A.J. Green, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown. I might change my mind on Tate. I really hadn't considered him much, to be honest, and that's kind of the reason why. But, yeah, I'm fine with any of those guys, but just A.J. Green, Julio Jones, if we think he's healthy, Antonio Brown are just such nut plays this week that I'd rather move out of that lower price, that mid-tier price range, I guess we could call it, or upper mid-tier. I'm interested that you brought up Thielen. I like that one just because Washington is nails against receivers, but Baldwin showed last week that they can kind of attack you can attack Washington, that area of the field where Thielen runs his route. So tournaments, I like Thielen. I'm fine with Tate, but I just like these higher priced guys more.
The difference in price between A.J. Green and Julio Jones is only $300. Julio was completely removed from the injury report today, suggesting he's healthy. I don't really know. There's no way. Nobody's going to know unless we get like some Schefter report in the morning. But either way, like, let's say I told you Julio Jones is completely healthy. A.J. Green is completely healthy. There's only a $300 difference. Who do you prefer there?
I think Julio. What about you?
Yeah, I think the game environment is better, right? Like, where we could see a really like sloggy, slow defensive game between the Titans and Bengals. It's much more likely that we see kind of a high-paced shootout in Atlanta between Dallas and Atlanta. So I would lean Julio as well, but certainly the ankle is a concern.
Yeah, Julio has 12-plus targets in 2 of the last 3 games. It seems like they're scheming him the ball. Atlanta's 17th in points per game this year, but they're 6th in yards per game. So they're still racking up yards. If they ever fix their scoring issues, they're going to look a lot like the offense from last year. So we're banking on Julio actually being healthy. We're banking on Steve Sarkisian taking his head out of his butt and, not giving Julio 6 targets. But if Julio sees, 10-plus targets and is healthy, like, he's going to blow up. He does every time he sees double-digit targets, he has a big game. So, I love Julio this week. I think if he hadn't dropped that pass in the end zone last week, everyone would be talking about him. He'd be like 8,700, and everyone would be trying to decide between him and Antonio Brown. So the optics are just different because of that dropped pass, but I think he's a tremendous play.
Yeah, I was just going to say that ownership, everything is so different just based on that one drop. Okay, Antonio Brown, 9,500, much like Le'Veon Bell, in a tier by himself. No one is going to argue that Antonio Brown is the best play, is the best raw play. He costs 9,500. Let's say you can only have one between Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in your lineup. Who would you prefer?
Bell.
Yeah.
You take 35 touches, like, the guaranteed workload is just so high. Red zone usage, everything. Like, Antonio, I expect them both to have a big game, but it's likelier that AB disappoints than Bell. And disappointing still probably 15 to 18 points, but that's likelier to happen than Bell disappointing.
Yeah, and like target projections, right? Like, let's say you gave Antonio Brown 11 to 12 targets. Le'Veon Bell is probably going to get somewhere between 6 and 8 targets. Like, their target projection isn't even that different. And then you also get like 30 carries from this dude. So,
if somehow this game stays close and they throw enough for Brown to get 12 to 14 targets, then Bell's going to get a bunch of targets as well. And if Brown's targets drop, Bell's targets drop as well, but he gets extra carries. Either way, it works out well for Bell.
All right, off the board at wide receiver. You mentioned some at the cheap range off the board. In terms of off the board at the higher range, I think Steph Diggs is completely healthy, has a bad matchup against this Redskins secondary, but he is a wildly talented player. And sometimes wildly talented players in bad matchups is a great place to look. For GPP plays, DeAndre Hopkins is 7,500 and saw 16 targets last week. They are obviously very low efficiency targets from Tom Savage, but nonetheless, I think Michael Thomas, if you think that the Saints will have a high volume passing attack, it's not a good matchup again, especially if EJ Gaines plays. But I think Michael Thomas at 7K after being the chalk last week, really the last few weeks, Michael Thomas has been chalk, and now he won't be owned it all. So there's some guys at the high range that I think are off the board. Anything else off the board you see?
Yeah, and if Dez is healthy, which we won't know till Sunday morning, he's a great play. Trufant is a solid corner, but he'll see plenty of Robert Alford, who's been struggling this year. And, Dez is going to get his looks if he's healthy. I like him more than Michael Thomas just because I don't have any reason. I guess you think that the Bills are going to play really well and potentially play with a lead. But if that doesn't happen, there's no reason for the Saints to break from what they've been doing. So I think Thomas sees his 8 targets, but I don't think he gets like 12 or 13 out of nowhere, whereas that could happen with Dez.
The only other guy I have on here that I think people might want to click, I probably won't, but Juju Smith-Schuster, if you think that Martavis will play the number 4 role, and that would leave Eli Rogers in the slot, Juju in this really good matchup on the outside for the whole game. Like, he's 5,600. It's expensive, but what do you think about Juju at 56?
He's got one game north of 6 targets, and it was last week, so it stands out. But I guess you can play him and Shepard, right? Like that's not something that you're prevented from doing, but I strongly prefer Shepard in that price range. I don't hate Smith-Schuster. If he's playing his normal role, he's going to get 6 targets and potentially 60, 70 yards and maybe blow up for a big play, but that's not a guy that I'm gravitating toward.
Yeah, and we could get a report on that. I mean, this Martavis story has been so well covered by people that we could get a report, hey, Martavis is active today, but he's going to be the number 4 receiver or whatever. So, and we could get a starting lineup announcement too from Pittsburgh, whether it's Juju, Martavis. So we'll certainly have an eye on that Sunday morning. Let's move to the tight end position where a lot of people I think are going to click on a guy they do not know a lot about, myself included. I do not know a lot about Garrett Selleck. I don't know if I'm going to click on him yet. Do you have a scouting report on Garrett Selleck? Do you know anything about this guy? This guy is, I believe, Brent Selleck's brother on the Eagles, correct? Do we know anything else about him?
He ran 31 routes last week or something, but he's primarily a blocking tight end. The matchup's tremendous, right? The Giants have allowed a tight end touchdown every game this year. 2,500, I love it. I love the price. I love what it opens up. I would much rather play Cam Brate at 4,100 or Kyle Rudolph at 4,600. Brate and Rudolph, you can absolutely lock them into 7+ targets. And I know that Diggs is back, but that's the way you move the ball against Washington. They've allowed the most tight end receiving yards this year. Brate's in a good matchup, and he has Fitzpatrick, who's going to be throwing the ball, looking to the tight end more than Jameis would already. So you can actually get, 15 to 18 points from those guys, and Selleck might get you 2. So that scares me. I got to kind of decide, for example, here's a good question. Okay, would you rather have AJ Green and Cameron Brate or Antonio Brown and Garrett Selleck?
No brainer for me, AJ Green and Cameron Brate. Give me 2 guys that can get 25 points rather than one guy who I'm praying gets 6.
Yeah. And Selleck could get us 12 to 15 points, but just his range is so broad.
Yeah. I've been down this path with George Kittle before, CJ Beathard, man, it's really scary. And I know how bad the Giants have been against tight ends, believe me, but Selleck play is really scary to me. Probably, I don't know what's more scary, Selleck or Humphreys. I hope to play neither of them.
So yeah, and you could kind of make that argument there in several spots. I think Brate's the guy you move up to, right? Tyler Kroft isn't a significantly better play than Selleck if you're going to spend an extra 1,100. Ebron has been so bad this year that even against Cleveland, I'd rather play Selleck at 2,500 than Ebron at 31. But if you move up to Brait and you say, okay, where am I saving this 1,600 elsewhere, whether it's moving down from Julio to that Golden Tate range or moving from AB down to Julio or AJ Green, I think you can make the case that the other side of that's better. I'm not as quite as sold on it as you seem to be, but just because I really want Antonio Brown.
Did you play George Kittle during the shower narrative week?
I did not play him during the shower narrative week.
So that's
I
why
played him another week though.
That's why you're not completely burned and willing to play Selleck.
But like Kittle didn't play that week. I mean, that was a different situation. He didn't literally didn't see the field. He played like 30 snaps.
Yeah, I would note also that not only is Kittle out, but the backup, also, I forget his name, is like Hukautini is also out. Logan Paulson will back up Garrett Selleck on Sunday. One guy that we didn't mention, like if you can find 500, would you rather play Austin Hooper, who hasn't been great, but at least has a role in a potential shootout? He's only $500 more than Garrett Selleck.
Yeah, and he's seen 6+ targets in 4 of the last 5 games. He also has those 2 target games, and in the midst of this run, he's had I think a 1 target game. So that scares me quite a bit, but I think that's a good question. I don't really have an answer yet on it.
Yeah.
I think it's just something to like dig into and keep weighing throughout the weekend.
Right. I mean, it's only $500 difference from Garrett Selleck, like a blocking tight end that we know nothing about with CJ Beathard, to get to Austin Hooper in a shootout with Matt Ryan. Like $500,
against a team that's like bottom 5 in DVOA against the tight end.
Yeah. So that would be a play for me, but totally agree with you on Cam Brait. Cam Brait, I think, will see the biggest red zone role change. He's second on the Bucs in targets inside the 10-yard line this year. Cam Brait's run 63% of his snaps from the slot already this year. Could see that percentage go up if you think they're going to play Humphreys outside at all. So Cam Brait is an awesome play, I think, at 4,100. We don't have news yet on Jordan Reed and Jamison Crowder. If they're both out, I would assume that you're fine with Vernon Davis. Again, I know the matchup isn't that great, but I think that Vernon would be fine. At 4,700, we had the Austin Seferian-Jenkins revenge game, which I doubt I'll be on, but Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I think, like he got 2 touchdowns in the last month, taken away in brutal fashion. If that hadn't happened, you'd likely see more people on him. And then, of course, Evan Ingram, I'm not sure we can fit him, and Jack Doyle is up there too, but Evan Ingram is like an awesome play. It's just he's 6,200. Have you tried to compare Evan Ingram to any of the wide receivers in that 6K range?
No, I've kind of just decided that I'm not spending up at tight end. Maybe tomorrow I'll get to that. What have you seen when kind of looking at the pricing that way?
Yeah, me too, because I probably want to play 3 running backs, so it's going to be hard to if you do that, then it's hard to play 2 tight ends, and it's hard to make a team with 3 running backs that you want if you don't take some value at tight end, whether it's Brait or Selleck or whatever you want to do. So
because you can go Powell, Hyde, and Bell, or you can go Powell, Fournette, and Bell, Powell, LaShawn, and Bell. I mean, that's so much more optimal than going 2 tight ends just to save money. That I totally agree with you there. I mean, I think that Brait could make your weekend, and he's not going to kill you, whereas Selleck could kill you. So you make a good point there. But we've seen, I don't know, it still scares me. Like in the example I gave earlier of Green and Brait, like Green has so many 10 to 12 point games this year. We didn't really have time to dig into the matchup, which is great. The target should be there, but it's still a little scary. Like you're not locking him in for 20+ points like you are with Brown. What you said makes the most sense. It's like the week we talked about Bell and Zeke, like Bell was the better play that week, even though Zeke went off for more points. So I think that, Brait and AJ Green is the preferred combo there, but I could see the other one paying off.
Yeah, I think Evan Ingram is an awesome tournament play now that I think about roster construction and how people are going to struggle to fit him. Anything else at tight end off the board at all?
Nope. Let's zoom through defense.
All right. I think the most popular defense from what I'm seeing out there will be the Bears at 3K at home against Brett Hundley, considering how bad Hundley looked in front of a national television audience. Did you look at the Bears, and do you think they're worthy of being the chalk at 3K?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, any team, when we talk about chalk on defense, we're talking about a totally viable fade, just because if a different team gets a defensive touchdown, you separate yourself. But the Bear, like, my favorite play is, just if we look at matchups, are the Lions, the Rams, the Steelers. Obviously, you got to pay up for any of those. The Bears are my favorite down in this range, followed by the Jets at 2,800. And then a team I actually really like, and I've built several rosters messing around with this, is the Browns at 2K. And I know that that's not going to be popular because everyone's talking about Stafford and the receivers. But again, like, the Browns are going to give up points because Kaiser's going to turn the ball over. I mean, that sucks. But they're not just getting smashed. They're going to get sacks. The Lions have one of the worst offensive lines. With the fact that the Browns prevent teams from running, they filter targets to the air, which leads to yards and touchdowns, but also leads to interceptions. So I think the Browns at 2K, I mean, they're probably going to get you 6 to 7 points with upside for more if they, get a big player touchdown, something like that. So for 2K, I like the Browns quite a bit.
I like all those. The only ones I don't like the Browns that much, but I like all the other ones you mentioned. You didn't mention the Vikings. We'll see what happens with the Redskins' offensive line. But the Redskins are already extremely pass centric, and all 5 members of their starting offensive line are questionable. Vikings do have an awesome pass rush, and coming off fresh off of a bye. And there was one other one that I had that you didn't mention. Oh, the Jaguars. Phillip Rivers, when he goes on the road, or pretty much any time, is due for mistakes and sacks taken. Like, it just happens. So Jaguars are extremely expensive, just like they were last week when they were an awesome play, ended up scoring, I believe, the most points out of any defense, or maybe the Saints ended up scoring the most last week. But Jaguars every week, I mean, are just an awesome play. They are expensive, though, at 3,900. Let's get
to if you get 14 points or something from one of these expensive teams, it's worth it for paying an extra $700-800.
Yeah. All right, we got to give the people some stacks. They need their stacks. Why don't you go first? Give me either a contrarian or a chalky stack, and then I'll go.
Let me know if this counts as contrarian or chalky. Eli, I guess it's going to be chalky. Eli to Sterling Shepard. I think that's one of the sharpest plays on the weekend.
Yeah. So my first instinct is that Eli won't be that high owned, maybe like 8%. I think more people are considering Fitz maybe. But Sterling Shepard is for sure going to be in the 20s. So I think you can make that unique in certain ways. I wrote that up today in my article. Eli, Shepard, and bring it back with Selleck in GPPs. So I don't know.
Or bring it back with Hyde in any format.
Or you could run it back with Kendrick Bourne if you really want to.
I don't know why you think that's so crazy. Dude saw 6 targets last week.
All right. I think that the highest floor chalky stack is Matthew Stafford to Golden Tate. The Browns are so strong against the run, and the Lions can't run the ball anyways. I expect a pass-centric game plan at home where Matthew Stafford excels. And Golden Tate, as the possession receiver, will avoid a lot of Jason McCourty, and I think that, he's just like a lock for 6 to 7 catches. So really high floor stack there for my chalk stack, Stafford and Golden Tate.
I'm going to go Matt Ryan to Julio Jones, which in a past life would have been the most obvious and chalkiest stack on this slate. Not the case this season, and we went through everything we don't know about Julio this week, but definitely has high potential to pay off in tournaments.
All right. I'm tempted to go with a Mariota stack as something super contrarian, but I'm really worried that this game is going to be low scoring. So I will go with Big Ben to Juju. As I noted, and you can play other Steelers in there, but I just don't believe that the Steelers put Martavis Bryant right back in his role. And if you give me Juju for all the snaps against this Colts defense, I think that can make sense in tournaments. And you can certainly play Bell in there. Also, you can certainly play Antonio Brown in there also. But I think Ben is maybe not going to be as owned as I originally thought, just because Stafford and Dak and Ryan and all the cheap guys also. So, I think that's interesting. All right. Sherry's on the couch in her spot. that is going to do it for this episode of the quote-unquote expert, quote-unquote roundtable. For America's Sharpest Hippie, JM, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody, this weekend.